Picture yourself abandoned on a lonely, uninhabited island, your only companions, the haunting cries of the jungle, and the endless roar of waves pounding the shore. For more than 4 years, one man endured this nightmarish existence. This is the harrowing true tale of a castaway whose astonishing survival against impossible odds still challenges the very idea of human endurance. Born in 1676 in the modest Scottish village of Lower Largo, Alexander Selkirk was the 7th son of a humble shoemaker, a background that gave him little to lose and everything to prove. As a young man, his fiery and defiant nature even earned him a formal summons before the Kirk session in 1693 for indecent conduct, a hearing he famously skipped by going to sea. It was that same dream of a life at sea that set him on the path to an adventure that would change him forever. Began his seafaring career in 1703 when he joined an expedition under the command of the English privateer William Dampier. Setting sail from Ireland, their mission, sanctioned by letters of marque, was to attack enemy vessels during the War of the Spanish Succession. Dampier captained the St. George, while Selkirk served aboard the Sinway ports under the 21-year-old Captain Thomas Stradling. After a brutal voyage around Cape Horn, their fleet engaged a French ship that managed to escape and warn Spanish forces, and a failed raid in Panama left spirits dangerously low. By May 1704, Stradling and the Sinway ports parted ways with Dampier, setting into motion the extraordinary twist of fate awaiting Selkirk. By September, the Sinway ports anchored at the uninhabited island of Masiera, a remote 18.5 square mile volcanic island in the Juan Fernandez archipelago, sitting 418 miles off the coast of Valparaiso, Chile, to replenish water. That desolate speck of rock and jungle was about to become his entire world. During the voyage, Selkirk had grown increasingly alarmed about the ship's condition, leading to frequent clashes with Captain Stradling, and his fears were well, as the Sinway port's hull had been quietly rotting from a severe worm infestation. Convinced the vessel would not survive much longer, Selkirk made a desperate choice. He declared he would rather remain on the island than sail further under Stradling's command. To his shock, Stradling agreed and left him behind, a decision that proved fatal for those who stayed, as the ship later foundered off the coast of Colombia, and Stradling and his surviving crew were imprisoned by the Spanish in Lima. Almost instantly regretting his decision, Selkirk begged to be brought back aboard, but Stradling, determined to assert authority and make an example of him, refused. As the Sinway ports vanished beyond the horizon, Selkirk faced the crushing realization of his fate. He was utterly alone, marooned hundreds of miles from civilization, left with only a few meager possessions: a musket, an old hatchet, a pot for cooking, a knife, carpentry tools, his Bible, and some clothing and bedding. The island was raw and untamed, alive with unsettling cries that echoed through the nights, and Selkirk's first days were marked by fear and hesitation, as every sound reminded him of his isolation. Survival demanded that he adapt quickly, as food and shelter were his most urgent needs. He first found refuge in a cave near the shore, living off whatever he could gather. According to journalist Richard Steele, who later interviewed Selkirk for the Englishman magazine, the despair of those early months was so overwhelming that Selkirk seriously contemplated taking his own life. Grief, regret, and loneliness weighed heavily on him, and for days on end he would sit staring at the endless horizon, later admitting that he often wrestled with the crushing weight of his isolation. but nature soon forced him to act. As mating season arrived, massive sea lions flooded the beach, claiming the very ground where he had built his fragile existence, cutting him off from his foraging grounds and pushing him inland toward the dense, forbidding jungle. At first, this move filled him with dread, but it became his salvation. Beyond the beach, Selkirk discovered a fertile valley brimming with wild turnips, native fruits, and cabbage palms, which would become the backbone of his diet. Even more valuable were the goat's remnants of earlier pirate visits, which he first hunted with his musket, then learned to chase down on foot and trap once his powder ran out. Over time, he managed to tame a few goats, using them for both milk and meat. His life nearly ended during one of these hunts when he slipped from a cliff while pursuing a goat, laying injured and helpless at the bottom for days. Remarkably, the goat itself had broken his fall, saving him from certain death. The island's dangers were not limited to treacherous cliffs. At night, rats gnawed at his skin as he slept, threatening him with disease and infection. Salvation came from the island's wild cats, which he gradually domesticated into nightly guardians, protecting him from the vermin and offering companionship in his solitude. As the weeks stretched into months, Selkirk grew more resourceful, and though rescue seemed distant, he clung to hope. From a high vantage point, he scanned the sea each day, tending signal fires in case a ship should pass. By October 1704, he had moved inland and constructed sturdier huts near a fresh stream, built from pimento wood with grass thatching and lined with goatskins for warmth. He boiled meat in a single kettle, kindled fires with pimento wood, and varied his diet with lobsters, parsnips, parsley, and watercress. More than food or shelter, his Bible became his most cherished possession. Reading aloud each day helped him preserve both his speech and his sanity, and its words gave him comfort in his darkest moments. One day, while working near the shore, his heart leapt. 2 ships appeared on the horizon and dropped anchor. Rushing to the beach, he lit fires and waved frantically, desperate for rescue. But his hope turned to terror when he realized they were Spanish vessels whose crew would mean capture, torture, or a lifetime of enslavement in the mines. Selkirk retreated deep into the jungle while the sailors searched the island for supplies, narrowly escaping that fate. When a band of Spanish sailors caught sight of him, they opened fire, forcing him to scale a tall leafy tree and conceal himself in its branches. The men even relieved themselves beneath the very tree in which he hid, unaware of his presence. Eventually they abandoned their search and returned to their ship, leaving Selkirk shaken but alive. As the years dragged on, his possessions gradually deteriorated. When his knife finally broke, he ingeniously forged replacements from an iron barrel hoop washed ashore. His clothing was replaced by crude garments made from goatskins, and running barefoot across the volcanic ground hardened his feet until he could outrun the very animals he hunted. Despite the hardships, Selkirk never abandoned hope. Unbeknownst to him, fate was moving in his favor. William Dampier, the very man whose expedition had stranded him, was once again sailing the Pacific, this time serving as navigator for the Duke and its companion vessel, the Duchess, on a mission to raid the South American coast. The fleet departed England on September 1st, 1709. By late January 1710, they approached the waters near Masiera, and on February 1st, Selkirk's long vigil finally bore fruit. From his lookout, he spotted 2 ships whose rigging looked distinctly English, heart racing. He rushed to the beach, built a signal fire, and waved desperately. Dampier, noticing the unusual smoke, dispatched a small landing party led by Thomas Dover, who was stunned to discover the ragged yet jubilant figure of Selkirk, alive after 4 years and 4 months in isolation. Captain Woodes Rogers of the Duke humorously nicknamed him Governor of the Island, impressed by his robust health, his ability to outrun goats, and his remarkably steady demeanor. Rogers later wrote that the experience proved solitude is not such an unbearable condition of life as most imagine, especially when one is thrust into it unavoidably. Selkirk was appointed second mate aboard the Duke, and his privateering zeal quickly reignited in Guayakil, Ecuador. He led a daring raid up the Guas River, seizing jewels and gold from Spanish nobles. And along the Mexican coast, he helped capture a valuable Spanish prize ship. On October 1st, 1711, after 8 long years away, Alexander Selkirk returned to England, where his astonishing tale turned him into a legend. His account was formally published by Rogers in a cruising voyage round the world the following year, and journalist Richard Steele's interview in The Englishman magazine brought his story to an even wider audience. Selkirk's extraordinary ordeal went on to inspire Daniel Defoe's 1719 novel Robinson Crusoe, sometimes called the first true English novel, which became an instant classic loved by both literary critics and general readers worldwide. Defoe amplified the drama considerably, while Selkirk survived alone for 4 years and 4 months. The fictional Crusoe endured a staggering 28 years. His legacy serves as a lasting reminder of the resilience and inner strength that lie within us all when faced with overwhelming odds. Centuries later, in 1966, the Chilean government honored his memory by renaming Isla Marsauer to Alejandro Selkerk Island. And today, the island, now a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, protecting flora and fauna found nowhere else on Earth, draws visitors from around the world. Tragically, Selkirk himself never found peace on land. He died at sea on December 13, 1721, succumbing to yellow fever aboard the HMS Weymouth off the coast of West Africa, his body committed to the deep ocean that had defined his entire life. A fitting, if bittersweet, end for the man whose story of courage and survival continues to capture imaginations around the world. And that was the unbelievable, true story of Alexander Selkirk, the real-life castaway who inspired Robinson Crusoe. His survival shows us just how strong the human spirit can be, even in the most impossible situations. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible tales from history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.